conservationist Alexander Fiske-Harrison. From the beast of Bodmin Moor to the Dartmoor Panda. What I realised in my recent visit to Dartmoor and this pony story is that it is not really a horse story at all. It is a very British story about classification. The moment a bureaucracy decides that all grazers are merely grazing units, the singular thing dies first. Sheep are economically protected because there are over 100,000 of them, some of them genuinely local breeds, but they make money and there is an entire agricultural architecture behind them. The cattle are functionally interchangeable hardy imports with no indigenous connection. But the Dartmoor hill pony appears to be something different. A genuinely localised, semi-wild upland population, centuries old at the absolute minimum, most likely 3 millennia into the Bronze Age, and genetically distinct even from the formal quote-unquote Dartmoor pony breed that His Majesty Edward VIII and others tinkered with for polo stock and refinement. In other words, the actual ponies standing out there in the rain are biologically more interesting than any stud book or agricultural contribution to GDP. The scary thing is the numbers. There are now only about 900 to 1,000 left on the moor. That sounds healthy until you begin looking at herd structure and breeding mathematics. In horses, the real bottleneck is stallions, not mares. Once you begin squeezing the number of active breeding males, you can push a population into long-term genetic narrowing astonishingly fast. Exmoor shows what happens afterwards. The animals survive, yes, but as a managed remnant population with obvious bottleneck signatures in the genes. You don't get immediate five-legged foals and screaming deformity. You simply burn genetic capital quietly until one day you wake up and realise your wild pony is now effectively a conservation exhibit, the Dartmoor Panda. Which is absurd because, unlike the panda, this would not be happening because the animal is intrinsically doomed, but because bureaucratic tidying and agricultural lobbying accidentally shoved it over the edge. And then I suddenly realised the tonal hook. Our generation grew up with the beast of Bodmin Moor, this wonderfully British idea that somewhere out on the southwestern moors there might still be a phantom black cat moving through the mist. But the real story is stranger. We already possess something genuinely unusual wandering the moors in plain sight. Semi-wild horse populations that fundamentally alter the psychological texture of the landscape. Sheep and cattle make Dartmoor merely agricultural. Ponies make it mythic. And Britain, in its infinite managerial wisdom, may now be in the process of turning a functioning, ancient upland population into the equine equivalent of a dwindling panda reserve. Not because anyone hates them, but because the system cannot distinguish between a sheep, a cow, and a living fragment of historical ecology.